Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever and wherever you are, and welcome to this mini lecture. Today, we are discussing the role of political parties. So, what exactly are political parties? Because political parties seem to be a crucial part of democracy. So, we have discussed voting and how it's the backbone of democracy. But when you're voting, the system in which you live in, the kinds of politicians you vote for, usually is the fact that most politicians belong to a specific party. The party has certain principles, certain goals that it advocates for. So it's quite rare that politicians run independently, which is actually, it would be my favorite way of doing it, for every politician to run independently. But unfortunately, in the world we live in, most politicians belong to a party. So, what exactly is a political party? Political parties are organized groups of individuals with similar political aims and opinions seeking to influence public policy by getting their candidates elected to office. How important are they? They are essential for the functioning of modern democracies, acting as intermediaries between citizens and governments. What exactly do they do? What are their functions? What are political parties for? So, first thing is representation. So, political parties aggregate and represent the interests of diverse groups, ensuring that various voices are heard in the policy making process. So, the way they do it is that they conglomerate, they come together in order to achieve a certain goal, and that's how basically uh, political parties are born. They come together in order to represent certain interests of the public. Candidate nomination. So, political parties recruit and nominate candidates for public office, providing a structured pathway for individuals to enter politics. Now, this is normally the usual way. You join a party and you make your way up there, and then once you prove yourself, then the party leadership decides to let you run for elections, and then you run for the elections on behalf of the party, and that will give you an advantage. Now, pros and cons to this. Pros is maybe it makes it easier to take part in politics and in the electoral system, but in my point of view, it kind of makes it somewhat redundant. It makes it somewhat boring, and it makes it, I think, less relevant, because I think each individual region, or it could be a neighborhood in a big city, has different priorities. So, if it's up to me, I would rather have all politicians run independently, but that's the way it is. Policy formulation. They develop party platforms that outline policy goals and priorities guiding legislative agendas. Now, the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is that for the vast majority of people, they're not really aware of how politics works and how the political system works. And that's why I'm here. I mean, that this is what I'm trying to do here, to educate people, tell them how systems work, how to fight for their rights, how to know how their countries work in order to have a better functioning government. So when parties come together and they build party platforms that outline party goals and priorities, the real cause, the real goal of this is to make it simple for the average voter to vote. But on the con side, on the downside, it means that you have a party that may represent a huge chunk of the population. And I don't think it's actually feasible or realistic that this party's goals and priorities actually fit all these voters. So the problem is that we need voters to be much more educated so they can actually be able to vote for uh, politicians who actually represent them properly, rather than just a vague general idea of what they may like or don't like and what may or may not be in their interests. Okay, let's continue. Political parties as mediators. Parties serve as institutionalized mediators between civil society and government, translating citizens' demands into political action. Now, there is a buffer between power and the public. in a democratic country, supposedly. Um, power cannot, uh, what's the word? Power cannot express itself without people. The power without people doesn't really exist. So the way we put it is you have people who are taking charge of power, and the political party is just a mediator between the concept of political power and what the people actually want, the people who voted them want. So a political party is a mediator in between the actual power and the people who from whom the power is supposed to be derived. The second point is accountability mechanism. So they enable political parties, enable voters to hold elected officials accountable for their actions and decisions, fostering democratic accountability. How does that accountability work? Well, it works in the sense that with each election cycle, you have politicians who may lose or may win. And that means that when the politician gets into power, gets into his place, he needs to think about the next election cycle. That's how the accountability works, in the sense that if the politician, and this is we're talking theoretically speaking, if the politician did not do a proper job and didn't get the approval of his constituents, of the people who actually voted for him, then he will not be able to make it for the next round. He will not be elected in the next election cycle, and this is basically the most powerful accountability mechanism in a democratic system. Political parties versus voter engagement. So parties play a crucial role in encouraging voter participation through outreach efforts and get out of the vote campaigns, because it is in their interest that their supporters go out and vote. And this is actually some positive thing about political parties, in the sense that they do their own kind of civic engagement when they go out and they call for their supporters to vote. So they encourage and participate in enhancing the democratic process. Educating the electorate, so they inform voters about candidates, policies, and issues, helping them make informed choices on election day. So they inform, and by inform, of course, they're going to be biased. They're going to tell you that their candidates are the best candidates, their policies are the best policies, and the issues that they advocate are the most important issues. Yeah. So this is how the way this is how the world works and how the system functions. But it is nonetheless quite a critical function of political parties and quite a good, like a critical aspect of democracy itself. Challenges faced by political parties. What are these challenges? Declining trust. Many citizens express distrust toward political parties, viewing them as disconnected from their needs and concerns. And one of those citizens who express distrust is yours truly. This is what I'll try to say here. So, the second point is youth engagement. So younger generations often feel marginalized within party structures, leading to decreased participation and representation. I guess because I'm so young, that's why I feel marginalized. It is actually quite a big problem with modern day parties, is that they kind of use old techniques, old ways of reaching to the public, and now with the rise of social media. And I think young people are much more aware of what's happening. It's becoming much more difficult to attract them. This is actually quite a problem. One great example of this is Brexit. So when the Brexit vote happened, Brexit voters voted yes. The main reason behind that is that most of the voters were old. If the young people actually took part properly, there would have been no Brexit, and now it's the young people who are paying for it. Okay. Third point is fragmentation. So in some democracies, the rise of populist movements has led to fragmentation within party systems, complicating governance. What's happening in some European countries is that there are so many parties that have kind of came out of nowhere, and they have been adopting populist policies and point of views. Some may call them extreme right wing, some may call them fascist or Nazis, depending on who you are and where you come from. But these parties have been causing trouble to the democratic system. Well, one main trouble with some of these parties is that they are inherently undemocratic. So they may use democracy to reach power, and then once they reach power, then they cancel democracy altogether. The biggest example of that is actually the Nazi Party. So when Hitler and the Nazi Party took over, they used the fact that they are in charge in order to basically cancel all kinds of opposition, and they turned democracy, which was Germany, they turned it into a full-on totalitarian regime. How do we strengthen political parties? First thing is inclusivity initiatives. So encouraging participation of underrepresented groups like women and youth can enhance party effectiveness and democratic representation. Like we said before, the problem with many of these parties is that they cannot reach young people, and many of them have been trying very hard to include young people and have younger and younger politicians to attract that young vote. Internal democracy. Implementing transparent internal processes can improve accountability within parties and foster greater member engagement. Of course, they need to be transparent within each other and to their voters in order to gain the trust. Like if you were to vote for a democratic party, right, a party that is part of the democratic system, you need to know exactly how they chose their candidates and exactly to what extent they have been successful in implementing their promises to the electorate, right? What do we conclude? So, political parties are vital institutions that connect citizens with their government, facilitating representation, accountability, and civic engagement. The second point is we need to strengthen these political parties through inclusivity and transparency, and it is crucial for enhancing democratic governance and ensuring that all voices are represented. So, in this lecture, I have discussed political parties, and I have made my point that I think it's better for politicians to be independent in general. But if we're going to have political parties, and I don't think political parties are going anywhere soon, if we're going to have them, then we might as well strengthen them by inclusivity and transparency. Like, inclusivity will make sure that more people are engaged in the democratic process, and transparency will give said political party more trust, and it will give people more confidence in what they do and in their promises, and will help people engage them and vote for them. Okay, so this is what political parties are for. This is what the system does. What do you think about what I say when I prefer independent politicians over party politicians? This is just my personal judgment over the matter. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I do think that it's better for politicians to be independent. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you next time.